and welcome to my independent part of the project for Dr. Stansberry's social psychology course here at Tune. My name is Emma Amrine, and I will be going over the cult analysis aspect of this project specifically. And before I begin, I do want to give a trigger warning that suicide will be mentioned in this PowerPoint, so take that as you will. I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Okay, so I decided to do Heaven's Gate. It was a very famous cult back in the 90s. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, I will be going over what exactly they believed and did within the cult, starting with the leaders. So on the bottom left, we have Marshall Applewhite. He's on the left side, and then Bonnie Lou Nettles is on the right. They leaded the cult in the 70s. It did diminish once Miss Bonnie passed away, but then Applewhite started another cult in the 90s. Same cult, just different time frames. And then on the top right, I have a picture of the 39 that were killed by the suicide. And again, trigger warning, and obviously I don't have all 39 people pictured in this. Just two, they covered themselves with blanket. They laid down some on beds and floors and tabletops, and they all wore Nike shoes, which was, I thought, interesting. And on the bottom, this came to a surprise. They have their own website, and it's still active. I myself have not looked on their website, and I don't plan on doing so because that scares me. So take that as you will. Do it at your own risk. And we're going to go ahead and jump onto the information about this cult. As mentioned previously, Mr. Applewhite was recruited by Miss Bonnie. She was an old nurse of his, and in 1975, they persuaded 20 people to move from Oregon to eastern Colorado. They left their families, all their possessions, money, friends, everything. And they were promised that they were going to be taken on a spacecraft, and it would take them to Kingdom of Heaven. Again, the spacecraft never arrived, so the cult itself diminished, and then in 1985, Miss Bonnie Lou Nettles did pass away. Flash forward to the early 1990s, this cult resurfaced, and Applewhite began to recruit new members. And then in 1995, there was a comet named Hale-Bopp that was discovered, and the Heaven Gate members believed that this alien spacecraft was going to take them to a higher existence. So come around March 1997, the comet was reaching close distance to Earth, so Applewhite and his 38 followers, they drank a lethal mixture of, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that word, and vodka, and then they laid down, hoping that their body was going to be taken onto this spacecraft and then pass through Heaven's Gate, again, into a higher existence. And yes, all 39 were successful at the suicide. Okay, so the next 3 slides are going to consist of how conformity, compliance, and obedience is illustrated within cults and their structure. Going ahead, and we're going to start with conformity. So conformity itself is when group members change their attitudes and beliefs in order to match those within the group. And in order to do that, they also have to be obedient and compliant. So it all kind of ties together, and I'll explain why now. So in order to conform, members have to think that their leader is legitimate, they're credible, and that's necessary in order to influence their behavior. Without the so-called leader, then the group's goals will be less prevalent. A really great example of a type of leader you would see in a cult is a transformational leader, where they change the outlooks of followers from self-interest to group interest. And a couple components that are required for a transformational leader is them just having charismatic communication, conveying a vision, and implementing a vision. So some of the reasons why members do join cults is because they want to fit in and have a sense of belonging. That could be whether they're in a state of transition or they just lost a job or a loved one, and they feel like something's missing in their life, and that's kind of what hooks them in. So I went ahead and I inserted 3 different types of conformity, and I personally see each type within a cult. So with private conformity, they go with norms because it feels right. Informational conformity, you change your opinions and your behavior because you believe the people that you're conforming to, their information is accurate. So especially with cult leaders, their members deem them as highly intelligent, and what they're saying is justifiable and accurate. And then lastly, normative conformity is when you change your opinions and you behave in ways that help you become accepted and not isolated or rejected by others. So we as humans, we do both informational and normative because it's just what we want and what we don't want. And you definitely see that a lot within the members of cults and why they join and stay. So, when looking at compliance in cults, I definitely wanted to note some persuasion techniques that are used to gain compliance, and that can be brainwashing, coercive persuasion, or thought reform. There's also a lot of methods that are used to gain compliance, and that can be rewarding activity, which is making promises in exchange for compliance, and expertise, which is attempting to make the person think that the persuader has some sort of special knowledge. And then there's a principle and a technique that I wanted to incorporate as well that I thought were also being seen in cults and their structure. So the foot in the door technique is used when you want to have someone agree to a large request by having them first agree to a modest request. And then with authoritarian principle, that's where people are more likely to comply when the person that's not necessarily giving the orders, but they have authority, if that makes sense. And then I also wanted to add that social rewards are much more effective reinforcers than material rewards when it comes to getting someone to do what you want. That ties along very well with members feeling lost and isolated and they don't want to be rejected or shut out. They're more likely going to comply with the social reward of feeling like they belong and they're a part of something. And then lastly, obedience in cults. Again, a charismatic leader, it's much easier to obey to them than a non-charismatic leader. A crucial factor contributing to the social influence of cult members is just obeying and listening to authority. That goes along with the social isolation aspect. I mean, these members, they don't have their family or their friends to help them get through life. They're emotionally dependent on the cult and the members in order to feel like they're loved and they're needed. And that creates loyalty. And the longer that they're in the cult, the more loyalty they have, the more likely they're going to obey. And it's also just human nature. We obey to authority figures. That's a great example is the Milgram experiment or the Stanford prison. And then once you're already in the cult, following the rules is necessary in order to keep your role. And that's something that these members don't want to lose. So, of course, they're going to obey with what they have to do. And just cults in general, they have such a powerful social influence on these vulnerable people and recruiting them. And once they recruit them, I mean, it just hooks them in. And they're just low points in life, and it's really easy to brainwash them. So on this slide, I'll be going over some social psychology terms that we use throughout the course and that we learned and how I see it being practiced within a cult. Starting with group dynamics, there is a structure for sure within cults. They have their leader or leaders plural, and then they have their members. And that kind of just is prevalent with how the power is dispersed and the expectations of the members of how they should behave and fulfill their roles. With de-individuation, sorry if I said that wrong, members lose a sense of their self and they definitely rely on the group as a whole to function. That ties along with social facilitation too. Members are just blindly following orders and they're obeying to their leaders, and that creates a level of effort for others to obey as well and believe in the ideas that are being implemented. So you definitely see all the members as like a group. They're not like individual people. They are all one. Now, with cooperation versus conflict strategies, there's definitely little to no conflict as far as cult related things because no one's going to retaliate to their leader if they believe in them and they think that they're the superior human being that's extremely smart and important and what they're saying is accurate. They're not going to retaliate. So couldn't find anything on conflict, but as far as cooperation goes, because there's no self-concern, it's other concern, they're going to be more thinking of the group's interest, so everyone's going to be more likely to cooperate, if that makes sense. And then lastly, with groupthink, this ties along with the mass suicide. So groupthink is when members who are very competent and can make excellent decisions end up making very poor decisions as a result of a flawed group process and strong conformity pressures. So that, again, is related to the mass suicide, and that occurred because of a flawed group process. Now, when answering this question, if I think that there is a prevention plan that can be implemented to stop the tragedy of cults from hurting people, my gut feeling told me no, I don't think there is. Unfortunately, I think that these people are just so hooked and like they truly believe that what they're learning and like they think is accurate, they're going to do it regardless. I mean, I could say maybe therapy or support networks for those who are in that transition state of loss and feeling alone, like right before they're hooked into the cult. That would be a great, like, plan, but I don't think that's, I mean, that's in their control if they want to attend or not. Um, I mean, the best way I can compare it is like cult members think almost the same way as people who have religions do. I mean, it's something they truly believe in. And if you tell someone, like, stop believing in your religion, they're not going to do it so easily. So I don't think that there are prevention plans. It's just something that they aren't easily going to give up, just like that. And then here's my last slide. These are my references. I really hoped you enjoyed my project, and thank you for watching.